Have you ever felt something so real, but that no one around you seemed to see? A deep, silent, almost mystical feeling that invaded you without warning, without logic, without form, and yet it was impossible to ignore. Maybe it wasn't sadness, maybe it wasn't pain, maybe it was soul trying to speak, something the mind was not yet ready to hear. Rumi said, "Beyond the ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there." But what if you're already in that field, only blinded by the wrong questions? What if what you call confusion is actually the silent birth of a truth that needs no explanation? The soul does not operate in the time of the mind. The soul feels before you understand. She recognizes the truth before any evidence. And that's why often you feel an emptiness you can't name, a presence you can't explain, a certainty you can't justify, but it's there, pulsating, burning, crying out. The truth doesn't arrive as an answer. It arrives as silence. Perhaps you are trying to rationalize what was not meant to be understood. Perhaps you are applying logic where only intuition fits, because the truth of the soul, it doesn't follow linear paths. She appears in dreams you don't tell anyone about, in tears that appear out of nowhere, in the shiver you feel when someone says a phrase that touches something you didn't even know existed. Spiritual truth doesn't shout. It whispers. It enters like the wind, like a breath, like a glance, and when it arrives, it unsettles, because he doesn't ask for permission. She enters, even if you don't yet know how to welcome her. She breaks down, even if you're still trying to maintain your defenses. She heals, even if it hurts at first, but nobody taught you to trust in that, did they? Nobody taught you that. Truth may arrive before understanding, that feelings can be more genuine than any explanation, that what you feel doesn't need validation from anyone, because it already carries the signature of your soul, and that's why you feel out of place when you try to explain your pain, because you're trying to put into words what can only be felt. You're trying to find logic in something that is too sacred to be reduced. The soul doesn't need justifications. It only needs space. Space to exist, to feel, to remember. Have you ever noticed how certain moments in your life only made sense much later? How some pains revealed truths that you only understand today? That's because the truth was already there. You just weren't ready to understand it yet. And that's not weakness, that's spirituality, that's emotional maturity. That's what Rumi called awakening of the soul, this process where light enters through the wound and not through the intellect. Perhaps you're exactly at that point right now, on a threshold between what you feel and what you can't yet explain. And that's okay, because that's where the magic happens, where the soul awakens before the mind accepts it, where truth precedes understanding. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now, because if you've ever felt it, it's because something inside you already knows, and perhaps all that's missing is permission to trust what you feel. If at any point these words touched you in a way you can't quite name, write it in the comments. I feel before I understand. This phrase is more than just a rant. It's a reminder that your soul is already awakened. Even if the world still tries to silence what you feel, this content isn't just a video, it's a mirror, and you might need to listen to it more than once to truly absorb it. That's why, leave a like not out of habit, but as a seal. That spoke to me. Now subscribe, because each new video is a step on this silent journey that your soul has already begun, and you don't have to walk it alone. Have you ever felt something so strong that you couldn't explain, but you knew it was true? Something that didn't make sense but was impossible to ignore. An invisible, silent calling that didn't come from outside, but from within. A feeling that wasn't logical, but seemed to carry an ancient ancestral weight. As if your soul were trying to tell you something your mind couldn't yet decipher. As if the truth were there, pulsing behind every silence, behind every pain, behind everything you pretend not to feel. This is how the soul manifests itself. Not with proof, not with easy answers, but with sensations. Sensations that arrive suddenly, sometimes in the middle of the night, when the world finally falls silent. Sensations that you don't know where they come from, but that pass through you like an eternal whisper. Pay attention, and you feel it. You feel that there's something there, something that wants to emerge, something that wants to be recognized. But nobody taught you to trust that, did they? From an early age, you were trained to doubt what you feel, to seek explanations before feeling, to believe that if it can't be proven, then it's not real. But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul doesn't need logic. It moves through resonance, through presence, through connection, and when you try to explain with words what can only be felt with the spirit, you disconnect. You abandon yourself. You fragment, and perhaps that's why you feel lost now. Because you feel too much, but understand too little. Because you sense truths, but can't organize them into sentences. Because something inside you calls, screams, begs, and all your mind can say is, "This doesn't make sense." But what if that's precisely where the truth lies? What if that's the sign that you're getting closer to what really matters? Spiritual truth doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't arrive in clear words. It insinuates itself between the lines. It reveals itself in the fragmented emotions you try to suppress. It's in that emptiness that appears even when everything seems to be fine, in the anguish that arises for no apparent reason, in the tear that falls without you understanding why. How many times have you tried to suppress this, thinking it was weakness? How many times have you hidden what you felt because you were afraid of seeming vulnerable, too sensitive, too intense? But Rumi reminds us, don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend, and its legend begins when you stop denying what you feel, when you understand that there is a pain that is not illness, it is language, a pain that doesn't break you, but reveals you. That is not the end. It is the beginning of the true path. And here's the point almost no one tells you. Sometimes your greatest truth will seem like a mistake. It will seem like confusion. It will seem like madness, but only because it hasn't yet reached the surface of your mind. You are still forming, molding, taking shape within your soul. And that's why trusting what you feel is so challenging, because you will have to believe before you see. You will have to surrender before you understand. You will have to remain in the dark, even knowing that the light is already coming. But what if, at this very moment, what you're calling emptiness is actually the expansion of your inner space into something greater? What if this discomfort you feel is simply your soul gently pushing you out of your emotional comfort zone? What if this restlessness is the harbinger of a new consciousness approaching? What you called confusion, weakness, excess may simply be spiritual sensitivity, a type of intelligence that the world doesn't yet recognize, but which carries the seed of healing. Silent healing, deep healing. Healing that only comes when you stop running away from what you feel. Do you feel it? That slight vibration in your chest when you hear certain words? That subtle shiver when a phrase seems to have been written directly for you? That tear that threatens to fall when you finally see yourself recognized in a piece of content? This is not chance, this is not drama. This is the truth beginning to surface, the truth that comes before any understanding. And at this very moment, as you listen to this, perhaps you are being visited by a memory, a feeling, an intuition. Perhaps something is opening up inside you. And however subtle it may seem, this is real. This is important. This is sacred. Because everything changes when you stop rejecting what you feel. Everything changes when you choose to believe that your sensitivity is a gift and not a flaw. Everything changes when you accept that there is something greater trying to communicate with you through what no one sees, through what you yourself try to silence. But now perhaps it's time to listen, not with the ears, but with the soul. Because the soul feels, even when it doesn't understand. The soul knows, even when the mind hesitates. The soul recognizes the truth, even when everything around says otherwise. If something inside you stirred, if something resonated, write it in the comments. I don't understand everything, but I feel it. Sometimes, all the soul needs is for you to recognize what is already alive within you. And the rest will come in due time. You try to rationalize what you feel, but your soul remains restless. You try to convince yourself that everything is all right, but something inside you still cries out for silence, for meaning, for truth. And the more you try to silence this inner calling, the more it intensifies. It doesn't disappear, it just changes form. It becomes chronic fatigue, unexplained irritation, insomnia, anxiety, and deep down, you feel it. It's not the work, it's not the traffic, it's not the other person. It's something inside, something that wants to emerge, to be heard, to be understood in another way, not with logic, but with the soul. It's as if you're trying to fit your soul into a world that only validates what's visible, but your pain is invisible, and that confuses even you. How can something hurt so much without a clear reason? How can emptiness have so much weight? How can silence be so loud? You look in the mirror, smile on the outside, but inside there's a strange agitation, a nameless sadness, a longing for something you never lived, or perhaps you did live, but forgot. And the most painful thing is that you feel it alone, because when you try to explain, nobody understands, nobody really listens, and little by little, you learn to shut up. You close yourself off, you distance yourself from yourself, because it's easier to pretend everything is okay than to try to justify something that doesn't fit into words. But the soul doesn't get used to it. It may be silent for a while, but it never forgets. It keeps pulling you, even if you don't want it to. It keeps provoking you, even if you try to ignore it. And that's the invisible problem. The wound that doesn't bleed, the pain that doesn't scream, the inner maladjustment that doesn't show up in exams, that isn't resolved with distractions. The wounded soul is silent, and that's exactly why it's so neglected, because the world looks at the external, and you've learned to do that too. But the price is high, because living far from the soul is surviving in pieces. It's functioning without truth. It's smiling without feeling. It's relating without truly surrendering. How many times have you felt you weren't truly present, even when surrounded by people? How many times have you accepted less than you deserved because you believed that was the most you could have? How many times have you tried to fill that void with things, with people, with distractions, and in the end everything only increased the hole inside? Because what's missing isn't on the outside. What's missing is you with yourself. It's your soul back at its center. It's your spiritual truth being looked at without fear. But this reunion doesn't happen with pre-prepared phrases. It begins with discomfort. It begins with the pain you tried to ignore. It begins when you realize that rationalizing what you feel is like trying to fit the ocean into a glass. It simply doesn't fit. It simply doesn't make sense to try to reduce a profound spiritual experience to what is acceptable to others, because the truth of the soul is wild, it is alive, it is untamed. And when you try to control it, it sickens. When you try to hide it, it rots. When you try to deny it, it transforms into suffering, and this suffering is what many call an existential crisis, spiritual depression. But in essence, it's just the soul pleading for space, for freedom, for being heard. And the problem is that no one teaches us how to care for the soul. They teach us to run, to produce, to win. But no one teaches us to stop, to listen, to embrace what has no form. That's why you feel this way, displaced, tired, demotivated, even when everything seems right on the outside. And the hardest part is living with this duality, having to function while something inside you is imploding, having to smile while your soul cries silently, having to move on when everything inside you begs you to go back. Back to where? To yourself, to the beginning, to what is essential, to the truth you feel, but don't yet understand. This is where many people get lost, because the world offers distraction, not healing, and you can even try to distract yourself, but you always return to the same place, the same discomfort, the same longing for something invisible. And this is not weakness, this is spiritual sensitivity. It is the call of the soul trying to break through the veil of unconsciousness. It is the truth trying to be born from within. And this birth is painful, because it demands detachment, surrender, the courage to look inward. But what if you accepted that this silent pain is actually a sign of awakening? What if you stopped trying to fix things and started listening? Listening without haste, without judgment, without wanting to change anything. Just listening. What is your soul trying to tell you now? What is this emptiness trying to reveal? What haven't you understood yet, but have felt for so long? Perhaps you are exactly where you need to be. Perhaps this pain is the gateway. Perhaps this restlessness is the invitation. Perhaps everything you have experienced up to this point has been a silent preparation for this moment. The moment when, for the first time, you begin to listen, truly listen. If this invisible pain also lives within you, if you feel you have something you can't explain but that won't leave you in peace, write in the comments, "I listen to what my soul is trying to tell me." Sometimes it all starts with listening. And a word can be the key that unlocks the silence. Pain isn't confusion, it's blocked intuition. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters." And perhaps, just perhaps, This wound that insists on throbbing inside you isn't a mistake, nor a punishment, nor something that needs to be resolved hastily. Perhaps it's a message, a language of the soul that your mind hasn't yet learned to decipher, a silent yet urgent truth, trying to pierce through the noise of your rationality. Because you were taught to understand everything with logic, but the deepest truths aren't born from logic. They are born from silence, from feeling, from what the soul knows even when the whole world doubts. How many times have you tried to silence pain, thinking it was an obstacle? How many times have you asked God to take away the weight, without realizing that the weight was the path, that the pain didn't come to punish you, but to awaken you, that the discomfort didn't come to stop you, but to reveal you? There is a point on the soul's path where nothing seems to make sense anymore, and it is precisely there that everything begins to transform. Because the collapse of logic is the beginning of spiritual awakening. It is in this void that the light enters, not a noisy, saving, miraculous light, but a slow, subtle light that seeps through the cracks in your resistance. You feel it, don't you? That feeling of being in the middle of a process you don't yet understand, as if your life has entered a kind of spiritual silence, as if everything that once made sense is falling apart. But what no one tells you is that this emptiness is fertile, that the ground opening up beneath you isn't the end. It's the space for something new to be born, and what is being born may not yet have a name, but it carries an ancestral force, a truth that has always been within you, but now wants to blossom. And the first thing it does is shatter your certainties. You can call it a crisis, you can call it grief, a rupture, extreme exhaustion, but deep down, it's your soul freeing itself from its armor, its consciousness breaking through the surface. It's your essence saying, enough is enough, enough of living halfway, enough of pretending everything is all right, enough of ignoring the wound as if it were a mistake. It's your chance, your crack, your sacred fissure. But to see this, you need to change your perspective. You need to stop trying to control the process. The mind wants explanations, dates, guarantees. The soul wants surrender. It wants to be heard. It wants presence. And here is the spiritual truth that changes everything. The more you try to understand the reason for the pain, the further you get from healing. Because healing is not an answer. It's a state, an acceptance, a permission to feel without running away, to inhabit your own shadow without getting lost in it. Rumi said, you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. It sounds cruel, but it's liberating. Because a closed heart doesn't feel. It survives, but it doesn't live. And pain, however frightening it may seem, has a mission: to break what is not true, and to reveal what was hidden. Behind sadness, there is wisdom. Behind fear, there is power. Behind anguish, there is a soul calling out to you. And when you begin to listen more deeply, you realize that what seemed like pain, it was in fact a gestation, a call to be born again. But this birth doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, sometimes slow, sometimes painful, sometimes lonely, but always sacred. And this is the secret no one told you. Spiritual pain is not the enemy. It's an ally. It doesn't come to destroy. It comes to open, to illuminate, to reorganize everything within you. And the more you resist, the more it persists. Because pain doesn't go away when it's ignored. It goes away when it's embraced. And in this case, embracing doesn't mean surrendering to suffering. It means recognizing that there is a truth there, an ancestral memory perhaps, an old wound that is asking to be heard, an emotional trauma that has never been seen with compassion, a part of you that has been forgotten, but that still pulsates, still calls out, still exists. And as long as you don't look at it with the depth it deserves, your soul will remain restless. It will continue to lead you to the same place, to the same situation, to the same emptiness. Because the cycle is only broken with awareness, and awareness is only born with presence. Can you see it? That feeling that everything is falling apart might actually be the first step towards a profound reconstruction, a reconstruction of your identity, your faith, your way of being in the world. It's not about understanding everything now. It's about allowing the truth to reveal itself in its own time, because the light only enters the wound if you stop hiding the wound. Transformation only happens if you stop running from the pain. Awakening only comes when you accept that you no longer need to pretend that everything is all right, So perhaps the question isn't, how do I stop feeling this? But rather, what is this pain trying to show me? Because the soul doesn't scream for no reason. The soul doesn't provoke this discomfort without direction. And even if everything seems confusing now, there is a purpose, there is a message, there is a key hidden within this pain. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's waiting for you to recognize it. If you feel that this pain has something to teach you, if you sense that there is a hidden wisdom trying to emerge from within your silence, write in the comments, "I recognize the light in my wound," because sometimes everything starts with a word, and your word can be the beginning of a healing that requires no explanation, just truth. The truth doesn't need to be understood to heal, it only needs to be felt. And perhaps that's exactly where you've gotten lost so many times, trying to understand what only needed to be embraced, trying to organize the chaos with logic, when what your soul begged for was space to breathe. What no one told you is that the soul understands long before the mind accepts. And while you insist on answers, it waits for presence. While you seek explanations, it offers sensations. While you drown in thoughts, it expresses itself in silence. You feel something you can't explain and you think it's weakness. But what if it's strength? What if it's a language older than any word? What if this emotion that runs through you, that breaks you and rebuilds you, is precisely the key you're looking for? Not the key that opens doors to the outside world, but the one that opens portals within you. Portals of healing, of awakening, of reconnection with parts of yourself that have been forgotten, abandoned, discredited. There is a wisdom that doesn't come through reasoning. It comes through the body, through the skin, through the shivers, through the tears that come for no apparent reason, through the peace you feel when you hear certain words, even if you don't yet understand why. This wisdom doesn't need validation from anyone. It is the voice of your soul. And if you start listening attentively, you will realize that it has always been there. It was only ignored. It was only silenced in the name of what others call normal. But normal doesn't heal. Normal makes you sick. Normal imprisons you. And you weren't born to be normal. You were born to be whole, to live with an open soul, even if it hurts sometimes. You were born to access this truth that heals simply by being acknowledged, not by the mind, but by presence, by listening, by surrendering. Because truth doesn't impose itself, it flourishes, and it flourishes in the fertile soil of silence, of vulnerability, of the moment when you for the first time decide to stop fighting what you feel and begin to allow yourself to feel, without filters, without shame, without censorship. It is at this moment that healing begins. Not when you understand everything, but when you finally stop running away, when you accept that not knowing is also a path. That feeling lost is not a failure, it's a gateway. That discomfort is the soul reorganizing itself from within, because spiritual truth doesn't arrive with proof. It arrives with peace, a subtle, almost imperceptible peace that settles in your chest when you finally stop demanding meaning and begin to listen. Have you ever felt that? That moment when something within you simply calms down for no apparent reason, just because something deep has been touched. This is the hidden key, the understanding that transcends words, the comprehension that happens in the body before reaching the mind, the surrender that transforms effortlessly. But the problem is that we've learned to trust only what we can explain, and because of that, we are always disconnected from what is true. The soul speaks, and we ignore it. The soul calls, and we rationalize. The soul shows, and we demand proof. But the truth doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you don't hear it, it's not because it didn't speak, it's because you weren't present. How many times have you felt something was wrong and ignored it, until everything fell apart? How many times has an intuition warned you, and you preferred to follow the most logical path, only to later realize you already knew what you needed to know? This is not a coincidence. This is your soul trying to guide you. And what no one taught you is that trusting your feelings is a spiritual act, a return to the origin, a step towards your most essential truth. Perhaps you're waiting for life to give you certainty before you can trust, but the order is different. You need to trust first. Trust what you feel, even without proof. Trust what you intuit, even without guarantees. Trust that there's something greater moving within you, something that doesn't need explanation, only permission. Permission to be felt, to be lived, to be honored as the wisdom that it is. Rumi said, "When you stop looking for answers, you start listening. And listening is the bridge. It's the turning point. It's the space between pain and liberation. Because while you're stuck in questions, there's no room for the real answer, the one that's felt, not spoken, to arrive. And that answer doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from anyone. It's born within, in a place that has no name but that you recognize as soon as you touch it. That's where your truth resides. The truth that heals. The truth that transforms. The truth that liberates. And at this moment, perhaps your mind still wants to resist. Perhaps it's searching for proof, evidence, confirmation. But observe what your body is feeling now. Observe what is moving within. There is something that doesn't need to be said, but that is being deeply heard. Something that doesn't need to be understood, but that is being embraced. This is the wisdom of the soul in action, and it doesn't need a stage. It only needs space. If, after hearing all this, something inside you calmed down even just a little, write in the comments, "I trust what my soul feels." Sometimes, that silent trust is all that was missing for your truth to finally blossom, and your healing begins right there, where words can't reach but the soul recognizes. Perhaps you're in a relationship that's already over, but you still feel it. Maybe you physically said goodbye, moved house, deleted messages, blocked numbers, ended conversations. Maybe you've told yourself you've moved on. Maybe you've even started something new, but deep down something still lives inside you. An invisible presence, a silent connection, an emotional echo that insists on remaining, even when everything on the outside has ended. This isn't attachment. It isn't weakness. It isn't illusion. This is the soul still processing a truth that arrived before your mind could comprehend it. And that's how it is with almost everything that truly matters. The soul feels first. The soul recognizes the end on before the farewell. And it also recognizes continuity, even after separation. Because spiritual truth doesn't depend on what the eyes see. It moves from within, in the slow rhythm of healing, in the sacred time of emotional integration. And that's why you can continue to miss someone who no longer does you any good. You can continue to dream of places you've already left. You can continue to carry memories that your reason tells you should have already been overcome. But the soul doesn't obey reason. It only obeys truth. And this truth, when it arrives, isn't always clear. It isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it arrives as a nameless longing. Sometimes as a lump in the throat. Sometimes as an inexplicable sadness. And when you try to understand all this with your mind, you get frustrated. Because the mind wants logic. It wants order. It wants a beginning, middle, and end. But the heart lives in cycles. And what wasn't fully felt returns. What wasn't truly integrated comes back. And no matter how much time passes, if the emotion was ignored, it remains. Perhaps you left a place, but something from there still lives within you. An unfinished conversation, a gaze that lingered, a part of you that couldn't be who it truly was. And that's why you feel something pulling you back, even without wanting to return. It's not that you want to relive it, it's that something within you still wants to understand. And here's the revelation: you no longer need to understand. You need to live what you feel. Give space for the pain to complete its cycle. Give space for the soul to grieve what was and what could have been. Because pain isn't just absence. It's also the space where truth flourishes. It's the mirror of what was real, even if it's over. And when you accept feeling, without trying to fit it into explanations, something begins to reorganize itself. You realize that what holds you back isn't the person, it's not the place, it's not the story. It's the resistance to feeling what still needs to be felt. It's the fear of diving into what seems dark, but which in reality is fertile. Perhaps you're still trying to find reasons to justify why you feel the way you feel. Perhaps you're still waiting for someone to validate your pain, legitimize your longing. Accept that you still cry over things that should have already passed. But the soul doesn't understand these deadlines. The soul doesn't operate on the world's calendar. It has its own time, and that time needs to be respected. It needs to be honored, because only then can the truth reveal itself in depth. You don't need permission to feel. You don't need external understanding to validate your process. What you feel is real, it's legitimate, and the more space you give it, the freer you become, because the prison isn't in the pain, It's in the denial. It's in the attempt to force a cure that hasn't yet found fertile ground to grow. It's in the rigidity of a mind that can't embrace the fluidity of the heart. And that's why so many of us live trapped in old stories, because we don't experience emotions to the fullest, because we try to skip steps, shorten paths, rationalize feelings. But the soul doesn't accept shortcuts. It needs you to go through it, to feel, to say, I don't understand everything, but I accept feeling. And when that happens, something opens up. A new perception is born. A freedom that no longer depends on the presence of the other, on rational explanation, on formal closure. You can feel and move forward at the same time. You can cry for something that won't come back, and still smile for being alive. You can carry an unresolved story in your heart and still walk lightly, because now you no longer need to understand. You only need to be present for what emerges, and trust that, even if it seems chaotic now, there is a greater wisdom guiding everything. A wisdom that doesn't require logic, only presence. If you feel you're still carrying something that should have gone, if you realize there are stories within you that haven't been fully cried over, felt, or honored, write them in the comments. I accept feeling what still lives within me, because sometimes that alone is the beginning of the liberation you so desperately seek, and the soul is grateful every time you choose to feel instead of running away, because it is in feeling that truth finds its home. You don't need to understand everything to move forward. This is one of the hardest truths to accept when immersed in emotional pain or soul transitions. The mind wants control, it wants guarantees, it wants maps. But the soul wants freedom. It doesn't want to understand. It wants to move. It wants to trust the invisible, even if it doesn't have words to explain what it feels. And perhaps that is precisely your greatest challenge now, to continue even without understanding. To trust even without proof, to remain present even when everything seems uncertain. Rumi said, when the spirit rises, understanding follows. This changes everything, because it shows that spiritual awakening doesn't begin with understanding. It begins with surrender. And surrender isn't passive, it's courageous. It demands that you let go of the need to control the process. It demands that you embrace the mystery and allow life to reveal to you what needs to be seen in due time. And that time is rarely the time of the mind. The mind is immediate. The soul is patient, and between the two you need to choose whom to serve. You may be in the midst of a profound process right now, feeling that everything is changing within you. Perhaps it's difficult to explain, perhaps you can't put into words what's happening, but that doesn't mean it's not real. It just means it's still being gestated. It's still being deciphered by the subtler layers of your consciousness. And that's why the path to spiritual healing requires trust. Not blind trust, but intuitive trust, a kind of faith that doesn't come from the outside, but from within. The faith that is born when you recognize that there is something greater in motion, even if you don't yet know where it will lead you. This is the turning point in consciousness, the moment you stop searching for answers and begin to cultivate presence, the moment you stop resisting and begin to embrace. And this turning point isn't a grand event. Often it's silent. It happens in the middle of the night when you stop fighting what you feel and simply breathe with what is. It happens when you decide not to run from the pain, but to sit with it. When you choose to listen instead of reacting. When you recognize that you're already on the path, even if your feet are still unsteady. You don't need all the answers to be free. You only need to accept that some answers will only come after the journey. They will only come after surrender. They will only come when you stop hiding from your own light. Because often what you call confusion is just light entering where there was shadow before. What you call fear is just the new trying to occupy a space that the old doesn't want to leave. What you call loss is just the ego resisting the natural movement of the soul, which is to grow, expand, transcend. And when the spirit rises, as Rumi said, everything changes. Priorities shift, certainties crumble, questions become more important than answers. And in this new space of awareness, you begin to realize that everything is exactly as it should be, even the chaos, even the doubt, even the silence, because there is an order behind the apparent disorder, a wisdom that works behind the scenes of your pain. And when you stop fighting the process, this wisdom begins to flourish. Have you ever felt that? That peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, that moment when, even without understanding, you know that everything is all right. That's the sign that your consciousness is rising. That's the sign that you're crossing the bridge between mind and soul. Because while the mind seeks solutions, the soul seeks meaning. And meaning isn't found in the intellect. It's found in experience, in feeling, in being present with what is, without needing everything to be perfect. The spiritual turning point isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering what has always been within you, remembering that your soul carries ancestral wisdom, remembering that you already know how to navigate pain, remembering that you are not broken, you are being molded, remembering that understanding doesn't need to come first, it will come later, after acceptance, after listening, after allowing yourself to live the truth that already pulsates in your heart. And at this moment, perhaps you are still waiting for an external change, for an answer, for a sign, for relief. But perhaps the true change has already begun, silent, invisible, spiritual, and it is transforming you from the inside out, even if you don't yet realize it. It is aligning you with what is true, with what is essential, with what really matters. And this alignment doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be trusted. If something inside you recognizes this process, if you feel you are changing inside even without being able to name these changes, write in the comments, "I keep going, even without understanding," because this is the bravest step of all, to move forward, guided by the soul, even when the mind still doubts. And perhaps, just perhaps, this silent step is already the liberation you've been seeking. What you feel now is not confusion. It is the silent birth of a new truth, a truth that cannot be explained. It is embodied, that cannot be read. It is lived, that cannot be proven. It is recognized. And perhaps at this very moment, you are experiencing this birth without realizing it, feeling something growing inside, a strange, almost unsettling lightness, as if a part of you is being replaced by another that doesn't yet have a name, a softer part, more intuitive, more connected to what is invisible but undeniably real. You are not losing control. You are returning to the center. You are leaving the mental space and returning to the space of the soul, where things don't need to be exact to be true, where you don't need to know to feel that you know, where you don't need to understand to recognize that something is yours. The mind fears this place because it doesn't master the terrain of the invisible, but the soul flourishes there. The soul moves in this silence. The soul recognizes without needing to justify. This new truth that is being born within you is not meant to be organized into sentences. It is meant to be incorporated into the way you breathe, look, feel, and relate to the world. It is a change in vibration, not in theory. It is the exchange of a frequency based on fear for one attuned to trust. Not blind trust, but the trust that springs from the body, from inner listening, from the silent certainty that something is right, even when everything seems wrong. And this transformation doesn't happen with applause. It happens deep within, in spaces where no one sees, when you cry silently and feel that something has been cleansed, even without knowing what. When you fall silent in a conversation and, for the first time, feel that you are respecting yourself. When you choose not to react, and this is not escape, but wisdom. This is truth incarnating. This is the soul taking up space. This is you returning to yourself. Perhaps you feel tightness in your chest, but it's not pain. It's expansion. Perhaps you feel empty, but it's not absence. It's purification. Perhaps you are more sensitive than usual, crying over simple scenes, old songs, memories that seemed buried. This is not weakness. This is a new field forming within you. It is your spiritual sensitivity awakening. It is your heart opening portals that have been closed for so long. And when that happens, it's natural for the outside world to seem strange. As if you were living on a different frequency, as if you were seeing everything with new eyes, and in fact you are. Because when spiritual truth settles in, the filters fall away. You begin to perceive relationships more clearly, emotional patterns more sharply. The lies you told yourself begin to lose their power. You begin to distinguish what is soul and what is noise. But this requires courage. Courage to allow the old to fade away without needing the new to fully reveal itself. Courage to walk through the unknown, trusting only in what you feel. Courage to live this truth that doesn't impose itself but manifests itself in the details, in the way you respect yourself, in the way you take care of yourself, in the way you are silent to listen to what previously went unnoticed. Because now you no longer want to repeat the same cycles. You no longer want to pretend you don't feel. You no longer want to live halfway. And that's when this truth begins to stabilize. When you stop searching for it and start living from it, when you understand that it's not in any book, any video, any speech, it's in your silent decisions, in the way you choose yourself, even when no one applauds, in the way you withdraw from places where your soul no longer flourishes, in the way you stop waiting for others to understand and start understanding yourself, you begin to walk more lightly. You start to speak less and feel more. You begin to accept that some silences say everything and that some answers will never come. But that doesn't stop life from going on, because now you understand that understanding doesn't need to come first. It will come later, after acceptance, after the journey, after the dive you had the courage to take, even without knowing what you would find inside. And at that moment, if you feel a strange peace, if you feel as if something has finally been named within you, even if you can't explain it in words, then know this: you are touching your truth, the truth that cannot be explained. It is embodied, that cannot be debated. It is lived, that cannot be imposed. It is recognized, a truth that was already yours even before you were born, a truth that has always been there, just waiting for you to make space to truly feel it. If you feel that this new truth is being born within you, if you perceive that something silent and profound is changing your perspective, your feelings, your existence, write in the comments, "My truth blossoms in silence," because it is in that silence that the soul whispers, and whoever listens is never the same again. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt a silent truth, one that no one around you could see but that burned within you like a hidden sun, a kind of inner certainty that found no translation in the external world, as if your soul knew something your mind didn't yet understand, and worse, as if no one else was willing to see it, and even trying to explain, you realized that the more you spoke, the less sense it made to others. Because what was being born within you was invisible to ordinary eyes. It wasn't a conclusion, it was a revelation. It wasn't an idea, it was a shift in consciousness. Perhaps it was during a breakup that no one understood. Perhaps it was in the silence of the early morning hours when, for no apparent reason, you began to cry as if an old pain had finally demanded to be addressed. Or perhaps it was at that moment when everything seemed right on the outside. Work, relationships, routine, but inside, something was squeezing you tightly. And it wasn't sadness, it wasn't exhaustion, it was your soul saying, "I can't live like this anymore." And this truth that emerged even without being explained changed everything. Perhaps not immediately, perhaps not visibly, but you know that from that moment on, something broke, and something began to be born. That's the nature of spiritual truths. They don't come to convince you, they come to touch you. And when they touch you, you can no longer pretend. Because what was comfortable becomes heavy. What was routine becomes unbearable. What you tolerated out of fear begins to suffocate you. And then even without wanting to change, you change. Even without knowing where to go, you begin to walk. And even if no one understands, you feel you are getting closer to yourself. But this process can be lonely. And that's why so many turn back. Because living a truth that the world doesn't yet recognize requires courage. Courage to seem strange, inconsistent, overly sensitive. Courage to abandon ready-made explanations, to distance yourself from loved ones, to close cycles that still don't make sense to anyone, except yourself. And that hurts. It hurts to walk with something that only you feel. It hurts to have to justify decisions that came from the soul, but that no one around you can understand. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, "Am I going crazy?" Or, "Am I exaggerating?" But deep down, you knew you weren't. You knew that feeling, that calling, that emptiness pushing you inward was real. It wasn't a phase, it wasn't drama, it wasn't an escape. It was the truth. It was your spirit awakening, refusing to continue sleeping in a world that has normalized disconnection. And you heard it. Even with fear, you heard it. Even without certainty, you felt it. And that's why you're here now, searching for words to confirm what already lives within you. And that in itself is beautiful. It's powerful, it's sacred. Because when the soul decides to return to its center, nothing can stop its path. Even if it takes time, even if it seems like you're going in circles, the truth always finds its way back to you. And that's exactly where you are now. You are not lost. You are returning. You are clearing away the layers of noise that have obscured your essence. You are removing the veils of expectation, guilt and fear. You are, little by little, ceasing to be who they said you should be, to finally become who you always were. But nobody talks enough about how intense this process can be, how it messes up what once seemed right, how it brings you face to face with parts of yourself that have been dormant for years. Because living a profound truth requires rebirth. And rebirth hurts. It hurts because it demands detachment. And attachment is never just to people or things. It's to the versions of yourself you've created to survive. But now you no longer want to survive. You want to live meaningfully, deeply, with soul. To live with soul is to live intensely. It's feeling too much, yes. It's caring about what no one else notices. It's seeing beauty in silences and messages in wounds. It's understanding that pain isn't just pain, it's a portal. That absence isn't just loss, it's an invitation. That a nameless feeling can be the soul's way of calling you back. And you feel it, even if you don't say it out loud, even if you haven't told anyone yet, even if you pretend it's not happening, something inside you has already awakened. And you can't go back to sleep. So if you've ever experienced this kind of truth, that invisible flame that no one saw, but that transformed you, write in the comments, "I burned in silence, but I was reborn." Because there is strength in this recognition. There is healing in naming what was once just a feeling, and there is so much beauty in realizing that you are not alone, that other souls also burn in silence, trying to live truths that cannot be contained in words, but that become life. Not all truth arrives as an answer. Some arrive as silence, as a tear, as liberation without reason, and perhaps that's already enough. Perhaps you no longer need to spend your life trying to understand what is already happening within you. Perhaps the desperate search for answers is only stifling the only thing your soul wants, to be heard, to be felt, to be recognized, because what heals is not what can be explained. What heals is what is finally allowed to exist, even if nameless, even if formless, even if illogical. You spent too much time trying to decipher feelings that were never enigmas. They were truths, subtle yet powerful truths that didn't want to be solved, but integrated, that didn't ask for analysis but for acceptance, that didn't arise to be corrected, but to show you where there was still space for you to be whole. And now, perhaps for the first time, you are stopping. You are making space. You are listening, and that changes everything. Because when you choose to feel, something realigns within you. You begin to realize that not all silence is absence, that not every tear needs to be held back, that not every emotion needs to be labeled. Some things simply are, and being is already enough. It's already precious. It's already liberating. There are truths that have no sound, but vibrate within you like a forgotten song. There are truths that don't appear in words, but manifest themselves in silent decisions, in different choices, in deeper gazes, in more sincere pauses. You no longer need to justify your sensitivity. It's not weakness. It's a tool for awakening. It's what connects you to what is invisible yet essential. It's the bridge between what the world expects you to be and what you truly are. And every time you allow yourself to feel what you feel, without censorship, without comparison, without guilt, you take a step towards your inner freedom. Because the soul doesn't need perfection. It only needs truth. And sometimes that truth is gentle. It doesn't arrive with shouts or certainties. It comes as an unexpected relief, like a deeper breath after a long time in a state of alert, like a peaceful sleep after entire nights of noisy thoughts. It comes as that feeling of, I finally understand, even when there's no concrete explanation. Because understanding with the soul is different from understanding with the mind. And when you begin to live with that awareness, the whole world changes color. Old pains take on a purpose. The stories that once hurt you are now seen as chapters that shaped you. The people who hurt you cease to be monsters and become teachers in disguise. What seemed like chaos reveals itself as a process. And what seemed like the end shows itself only as an invisible new beginning. Because everything you tried to erase was, in fact, trying to awaken you. And now you see, now you feel, now you remember. And remembering, in this context, is not reliving the past. It's returning to who you are. It's abandoning the masks. It's gathering the fragments. It's recognizing that your essence wasn't destroyed, only forgotten, but it's still here. It still pulsates. It still calls. And now, with each word that echoes in this video, it's returning. It's drawing closer. It's reorganizing itself within you, like a constellation rediscovering its form in the sky of your consciousness. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your soul is already listening. You don't need to prove anything to deserve healing. It's already happening, at this very moment, in the rhythm of your breath, in the flow of your listening, in the simple act of remaining here, feeling. Because feeling is revolutionary. In a world that teaches you to run from pain, remaining with it is an act of spiritual courage. It's the most honest declaration of love you can give yourself. And this honesty, this depth, this silent surrender, these are the portals that lead you back home inward, to that place where everything already is, where you don't need answers because you already live the answer, where you don't need proof because you already feel the truth vibrating in every cell, where you no longer need to search because you recognize yourself, where finally you can rest, even without understanding everything, even without knowing what comes next. Perhaps the cure isn't in what you're yet to achieve. Perhaps it's happening right now at this very moment as you simply listen, and that, however subtle it may seem, is already transformation. It's already rebirth. It's already truth incarnate. It's already soul in motion. If you feel that this silent truth, this inner calling, this unexplained liberation is happening inside you, write in the comments. I found relief in what doesn't need to be explained, because there is immense power in naming what you feel, and sometimes that single phrase is the seal of a new stage, the confirmation that something very profound has already begun, even if still in silence. If this journey touched you, if it brought you respite, reflection, or recognition, walk with me. This channel is a sacred space for souls who feel deeply, think profoundly, and seek something that the outside world still doesn't know how to name. Sign up now, because your journey doesn't end here. It has only just begun. If this video made sense, leave a like a silent seal that you have been touched by something real. Now watch the next video that's appearing on the screen. He is the continuation of this journey. Your soul will know when it finds the next key. And it's right there waiting for you.